It's Saturday, and it is time once again to talk technology as we kick off the Experts program here on Power Talk Radio with our tech expert, Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group. Luis, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, my friend. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So we've got some interesting stories to share with folks today. Let's start off with a warning from MalwareBytes that they sent out this week, and that is that fake, I think it's called CAPTCHA, website. CAPTCHA. Websites will hijack your clipboard to install information stealers. So for those who don't know, what is CAPTCHA?
Well, CAPTCHA is something that most of us see every day when we navigate to websites, and you see a little prompt that says, prove that you're not a robot. Sometimes you have to click a button. Other times you have to put in some characters. And what CAPTCHA does is it prevents scraping from internet sites that go in and take information from their websites. So CAPTCHA prevents that from happening because it requires you to take an action to prove that you're a human being and not just one of those scraping devices or applications that are out there on the internet. So it's very common. We see it all the time. I use it probably every day. But what these guys have done, these cyber criminals, they've created a CAPTCHA that once you click on it, it then prompts you to do some other things that are very unusual. Normally, you just enter the characters or click on the link and then you're through. But in this case, you'll be asked to do some things that are not common. And what really you're doing is helping them infect your computer with malware, more likely than not information stealers software.
Well, how do you tell the difference between a legitimate CAPTCHA and an illegitimate one?
So a legitimate CAPTCHA will ask you to click a box, right, to prove you're a human being, and then you're through. Or it may prompt you to enter some characters that are kind of wavy or a little hard to see just to make sure that you are a human being. Once you get through that step, you're on that site, and that's the only thing you should do. If after you complete those actions, something else comes up, like in this case, there's a pop-up that says, hey, you need to complete the verification steps by holding the Windows key and pressing the R button, and then do a Control-V and then press enter to finish. That is not what CAPTCHA does. CAPTCHA does not ask you to do anything on your PC or laptop to get beyond that. So if you get anything beyond just a traditional CAPTCHA, prove you're human, then close the browser, close that page, just don't continue on to that website.
And by the way, folks, if you want to read more about that, it's at malwarebytes.com/blog/news, because you don't want to get stuck on that. All right, Luis, before we get to the main story, I've got a couple other things to share with you today that I ran across. One of my friends sent me a link to story from KSPW Channel 8 that warns, don't click on these road toll text. Officials issue warnings about this smishing scam. I think everybody has been getting these lately. It's an epidemic, and that is on your cell phone, you get a text that says that you failed to pay a road toll, that you need to click on this link to go ahead and pay it. I'm seeing this all over. People on Nextdoor are writing about it. People online on Facebook and other social media are talking about the fact that they've just been inundated with toll road texting. And I bet you've gotten some too.
I get them at least once a week. And, it's like, hey, you need to click here in order to renew or it'll stop working, or please verify that these charges are true. Otherwise, they'll be charged to your credit card. So they try to give you a sense of urgency so that you're like, oh, wow, I don't want anything on my credit card, or I don't want something to expire. And you click on the link and it looks like, if you get there, very much like you would expect from a Smart Pass or some of those other devices that you use to kind of hit the high-speed toll lane. But the reality is that it's a fake site. Once you put in your credentials, they're able to get you to add your credit card and do some other things. So if you get a text like that, just ignore it, block it if you can, and just don't bother responding to it.
And by the way, the cybersecurity firm Palo Alto Networks said last week that a threat actor has registered over 10,000 domains for these scams. The scams are impersonating toll services and package delivery services in at least 10 states and the Canadian province of Ontario. Now, Apple will ban links in iPhone messages received from unknown senders, but the scam attempts to bypass that protection by inviting users to reply with a Y for yes and to reopen the text. So watch out for that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you get a text from somebody you don't know or unknown source, ignore it, delete it, block it if you can.
Right. And I received a text this morning. I know it was a scam, and it was, hey, let's get together and have a barbecue this weekend.
Yeah.
And so you text back and say, who is this? And then they say, hi, Lisa, this is Diane. Well, that isn't like Diane, who mistakenly was looking for Lisa and punched in maybe one digit off and got your phone number. That is a complete and total scam. scam. You get those, block the caller's number and delete it.
Yeah, exactly. Texting has become the new way of phishing. So be careful because it's just as bad as getting those phishing emails.
Another thing to jump on here real quick is the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, Lewis, is asking the High Court to reject challenges to click-to-cancel laws or rules. And for those who don't know, click-to-cancel is an idea that sprung up from consumer groups in order to give us users, on the buying end of things, say you get roped into some service online that you clicked and now it debits your credit card every month. And then when you decide you don't want that service anymore and you want to cancel it, they make it extremely difficult for you to stop giving them money. And you will have to go to a website. You're buried under pages of other things that you're, just to navigate through their website to find out where you can cancel. So there was this move to provide a simple click to cancel, trying to make it a law that says as easily as you can con someone into signing up for your service, you have to make it just as easy to cancel, like a one-button cancellation. And of course, many of the people selling these online services, and a lot of they're legitimate businesses, but they don't want to make it easy for you to stop spending money with them.
Exactly. And I think the FTC is pushing back hard, just, saying, look, there's nothing that really is onerous or difficult about this new rule. It's common sense, right? How many of us have signed up for something and trying to find out how to stop that charge happening becomes extremely difficult. So I think this is a common sense rule, and I don't think it's going to be overturned.
Right. And you know what I ended up doing? One time I had one of these, and I absolutely could not cancel it. I couldn't find where it was on the website to cancel. If you called the 800 number, you got lost in a voicemail hell where you could never get a human being on the phone. What I ended up doing was canceling the credit card. I called my bank and said, this card's been compromised. I want it canceled. I want a new card with a different number. And that's the only way it stopped these folks from being able to bill me, because the next time they tried to send the bill out, obviously it bounced back to them saying it was an invalid credit card number.
Yeah, and isn't that unfair that you had to go to all that way to just get rid of a nuisance? So I'm a big fan of click to cancel.
Alrighty. I've got one more to share with you here, and a buddy of mine sent this to me. Let's see where I put it here. Oh, it has to do with Starlink. And I don't know if you've heard about this, but Starlink has imposed some incredible data caps on their priority plans. And the satellite internet service is imposing a 1 megabit per second speed cap for priority customers who exceed their monthly data allotment. Now, that's the download speed. The upload speed is half of that, 500 kilobits. And it's intended to get business customers particularly to pay a lot more. And it's not going to be cheap. The company updated Starlink.com and sent out emails about the changes, which include removing access to unlimited standard data. Instead, SpaceX is instituting a hard cap once a priority user exceeds their monthly data allotment. The satellite internet service will then reduce download speeds to 1 megabit per second or less for downloads and 500 kilobits for less for uploads.
And this speaks to the popularity of Starlink and the fact that more and more people are using it, so they can now start adding additional fees to it, and this is just an inevitable step in that direction.
Right. So you're going to have to keep an eye on how much data you're using if you do have Starlink.
Absolutely.
All right. Finally, let's get to the big story, AI robots. You had an interesting motivation for coming up with this story, finding this story about AI-powered robots to become in-home caregivers. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, Ronnie and I were talking about the horrible death of Gene Hackman and his wife, and the fact that so far it looks like she died first and he was alive for another week or so before he finally died. Their dog died. And all of that made me wonder, like, if somebody had just checked in on them, if they had somebody that lived with them or some sort of service that would check in on them periodically, would both of them have died or either one of them? And so I got to thinking about technology, of course, and what direction are we going in-home care with technology? And there are a lot of strides being made with AI-powered robots here in the U.S. and especially in China and Japan, because they have a huge elderly population that sit at home and don't have any family checking in on them. So they've developed robots that are basically, think of them as companions that check in to make sure that you're okay, and they're designed to keep you company. And if something should happen, if you should faint or fall or be unresponsive, they can call first responders to come take care of you. And so I think we're going to start seeing more and more of that. And the story just highlights the need need for this kind of technology in home care for elderly folks.
And it's not a surprise that the genesis for this is coming out of Japan, because you talk about that they have a very elderly population and an aging population. And one of the differences between, say, Japan and the United States or other Western countries is that immigration in Japan is severely restricted.
Yeah.
And it is not possible for people particularly from the developing world, to easily get work visas to be able to move to Japan. So unlike the United States, where we have many people from the developing world that come here, and when they first get here, some of the jobs, like particularly a number of women, they'll become CNAs, certified nursing assistants, and they work for in-home support services, and they'll come in and help take care of people. And there is a population of people in our country and other Western countries that can do that kind of work. But Japan, with their very strict immigration guidelines, they don't have that population base, or very much of one, that's available to do that kind of work. So hence the idea of inventing a robot that can do some of that functionality. Are these robots supposed to be able to call like a 911 type of situation?
Yeah, essentially they can be programmed to be on the lookout for any sort of signs of distress in the people that they're taking care of, and then contact either first responders or a service that can dispatch a human being to check to make sure that it's not a false positive and the person might have just been falling asleep or something. But I think we're going to see a lot more of this in homes in the next couple of years, because these robots are becoming ubiquitous, and not just in homes, but in nursing care facilities and hospice places, things like that, to help support the staffing challenges that those organizations have.
And I'm sure the robots will be expensive, but the actuarials at insurance companies will look at this and say, well, this is the upfront cost, but let's ROI it over a period of time, and it'll end up being a lot cheaper than having an actual human being there on a regular basis.
Exactly.
And so I think that insurance companies will kind of end up facilitating the spread of this technology, because it'll be something that they'll be willing to pay for.
Yeah, and just like any sort of automation, it's always intended to supplement and help human beings, not to replace human beings. So in the case of in-home care, it definitely will be something that insurance companies will be more likely to fund rather than not, because like you said, it's cheaper than funding a human being coming in and checking in on somebody.
And it may be that the human being comes in during the daytime, but the robot will be in the off hours, like overnights and things like that. Well, interesting stuff, and great to have Luis Alvarez with us this Saturday morning to talk all about the technology. As we look ahead to Monday, the 24th, we've got a great story for you. And Luis, what are we going to be talking about?
Yeah, tune in to hear how Tesla is starting to make the move toward that driverless taxi that they've always wanted.
All right, that's Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, joining us today online at alvareztg.com. At AlvarezTG is their X handle, and Luis, the toll-free number for the I-Team.
Give us a call at 866-78-I-Team. That's 866-784-8326.